Well, Andy says hi, and so do I. And we both welcome you to our study in the book of Romans. In this lesson, I'm just going to give you the introduction. It's probably going to be a short lesson, but the book of Romans tends to have some pretty in depth chapters. So I'm probably going to need 16 different lessons to get through the book of Romans, because there are 16 chapters, 17 counting this one. Paul just covers a great deal of material in this letter, but there's one dominant theme throughout this entire epistle, and that is justification. Keep that word in mind as you read Paul's letter. If you don't know that word, many people make a joke about just as if you hadn't done it. Well, justify. Can you justify why you did that? Justification. Many scholars consider this the most profound work in the New Testament. The other contender for most profound status is typically Hebrews. But this is God's word to you. He has a message just for you. And this study can give you pointers on various topics and passages. And those pointers may be good, but only God can lead you into an understanding of what He wants you to learn. Make sure that your study time includes a serious amount of prayer time. I don't always say that. I should. But, Father, please help us to understand what you have for us to learn in your word today. That, frankly, should be our prayer every day as we look at His word. The book of Romans is very structured and organized, where Paul is teaching people that he's never met. He has obviously spent a great deal of effort ensuring that this is a complete work. We should make a serious effort to study and understand it as a whole, even while we look at it one chapter at a time. In fact, I am going to bring that out much as I did in 2 Corinthians. Paul didn't put the chapter breaks in here. I'm sure you got tired of hearing that. But Paul did not put the chapter breaks in. They came about 1,300 years later. So please, watch for that. And I'm going to bring that up again and again. Without a doubt, the Apostle Paul wrote this epistle to a church he'd never visited. In the last chapter of Romans, he names 26 people he knew. A good way to establish relationships with the rest of the church. Paul wrote this epistle while he was in Corinth on his third missionary journey, roughly around 57 AD. Pretty close on that. The church in Rome was primarily Gentile, but there were some Jews there. So the Gentiles almost certainly understood the rudiments of Jewish history and Jewish scriptures. Based on some of what Paul wrote, there's no doubt there was some Gentile-Jew controversy. When Paul wrote the epistle to the Romans, Rome was the dominant city in the known world, at least Western. It was dominant politically and socially. Rome ruled over much of the world. Western historians call it the greatest empire in the world, at least at that time. They ought to go back and look at Assyria from a few hundred years before, or look at China, the Mongols. The Mongols probably had the largest empire in the world ever. But Rome ruled pretty much England, Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, Greece, Macedonia, Asia Minor, Israel, Egypt, Northern Africa. I mean, a lot of territory and a lot of people. Speaking of which, let's just take a moment to get this perspective. There were two major population centers which Rome did not rule: India and China. Rome ruled 18% of the world's population. That's it. Hold on to that. Remember that. But both China and India were much larger empires during Rome's peak. China ruled about 30% of the world's population. And India ruled about 35% of the world's population. So, they were larger in terms of population, 18% for Rome, 30% for China, and 35% for India. And I already mentioned the largest empires in terms of population and in terms of size was probably in the British Empire shortly before, or shortly after, actually, World War One. At that time, when World War One ended, they ruled about 26% of the world's population, less than ancient China and India, but they ruled over more land area than any other empire in the history of mankind, and that isn't even up for debate. The old saying, the sun never sets on the British Empire, they literally ruled places around the world. So the sun was always shining somewhere in Israel or in Britain Empire. The second largest empire in terms of land area was the Mongolian Empire, I already mentioned, around 1300 AD. And they ruled about 18% of the world's population, but man, they covered much of, if not most of, Asia and Europe. Let's compare it to the largest empires today. Today, China and India both have about 18% of the population. And the great United States of America, the third largest country, contains about 4% of the world's population. That's it. We ain't it in size. Third, we're a fairly big country, but not heavy population. And just for comparison, let's compare Rome of Paul's day to California. The world population today is about 8.3 billion people, and I just checked that here in 2026. In 57 AD, Rome had their population for their empire was 250 million. So, the world population, at that time was about 250 million. Today, 8.3 billion. California today is around 39 million people. And during at 57 AD, the Roman Empire was about 45 million people. Slightly more people than California has today. Los Angeles, the city, 4 million people today. That doesn't count suburbs. Rome, in 57 AD, about 4 million people. Same city. Los Angeles, 469 square miles. Rome, 30 square miles. So city population density, California, Los Angeles today, 8,530 people per square mile. For a Wyoming guy, that's crowded. In 57 AD, the city of Rome had 130,000 people per square mile. I mean, that's more than double the city of Los Angeles per square mile. Seems like Rome was a very crowded city, to say the least. In comparison, the most densely populated cities of today are around 100,000 people per square mile, and Rome was at 130,000. Manila, if you're wondering, has the highest density of population of any modern city, with 112,000 people per square mile, not even as much as Rome. Rome was packed. I think they had to put them in houses with shoehorns or something. Anyway, so let's get the big picture here. Oftentimes people tend to ignore or skip over introductory lessons. Since you got this far, I'm glad. No, you're not one of those. But this lesson may be the most important lesson of this study. The point of this lesson is to give you the big picture of what Paul wrote. And remember, like I said, Paul did not write this book in chapters. It's important to read the book as a whole and to read it looking at each passage carefully. We often miss the original meaning of various passages because we do not see them within the context of the book. So with that thought in mind, if you want to truly learn what Paul taught to the Romans, you should read the book of Romans several times during this series of lessons. and I'm going to make some suggestions. What works for you works for you. Ignore me if you so choose, but my experience is that these work. There are 16 chapters in the book of Romans. For most people, that's no more than a half an hour of reading, maybe a little more because it gets a little detailed. So read it without any interruptions in one sitting. Do that at least once, if not, once a week even, once a month. We're going to be in Romans for 4 months. So try and read it 4 times. Here's a challenge for you. Read it twice a week during this study, but do it this way. Read it once using the New King James, or the New International, and then read it again using the Message Bible or the New Living Translation, or maybe the Living Bible or J.B. Phillips paraphrase. But try and read it twice a week. That's only an hour out of your life, people. Some say it'll take an hour. It just depends on the person. When I finish this, I will record a paraphrase of the book of Romans, and hopefully by the time you read this or see this at some date in the future, unless you're with me currently, you'll know. You can go see how long it takes for me to read it to you. But keep your focus as you read. An hour, if that's what it takes, an hour can be difficult to stay focused if you just read the words. It becomes very, Paul is writing this to the Romans, and he said, you hear what I'm saying? Reading it out loud can help you keep your focus, especially if you try to add emotions to what you're reading. Pretend you are reading to a 5-year-old and trying to make it interesting to them. Do you understand what I'm saying? Remember to read with an attitude of desiring to learn something new. Ask God to open your eyes and your mind to what He has to say through this passage. Take your time, read it with careful patience. Seek God's message for you. You will almost certainly find enough time to read God's Word if you don't watch TV for 1 hour. That's less than probably half of most movies these days, or at least 75%. A lot of TV shows are more than an hour. How about a football game, sports fans? How long does a football game last? Well, if you watch the whole show without fast forwarding, 2.5 to 3 hours, maybe more. You can do an hour of Bible study. Please read the Bible. Pray before you sit down to read, and pray when you are done reading. Ask God to bless the lesson you're about to study, to open your mind to see something new. And at the end, thank Him for providing His Word and giving guidance. Maybe thank Him for something you noticed in there that you hadn't seen before. Do take notes about passages that speak to you. Write down the chapter and verse, but also write down exactly what you felt when you read that passage. Don't just write, Romans 3:23 is good. Write down Romans 3:23. Kind of made it real to me about how I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that has these problems, that struggles to stop sinning. Write it out. Studying the book of Romans, after reading the book of Romans, read it again. Read it once in one sitting, and then read it again, doing 3 or 4 chapters a day. 4 chapters a day, 4 days, done. 16 chapters. Write down notes and thoughts during that portion of the reading. Read it without taking notes every once in a while. So you read it without taking notes, the whole book in one sitting. Call it an hour. And then you take 3 or 4 chapters. Well, take 4 chapters every day. And, if you have to, go to 3 and do an extra day, day and a half. But take notes during those readings. Break it up. If you do 4 chapters a day, plus reading it, that's 5 days. You got the weekend off. Hello? And each day when you read this, review the previous day's chapters. Just an outline, a summary, whatever struck your mind, however you want to do it. And all of this is going to help you see Romans as a complete book. Just like I say, it takes work. And I've already hinted at this. I'm going to point it out very bluntly here. Chapters 2 in the NIV starts with you therefore. Therefore is a word that says, whatever I just said, that's what I'm talking about. So chapter 1 to chapter 2, bad break. Now, the guy that put the chapter breaks in, he was a bishop, he's a very intelligent man. I'm not sure where breaks would be better in Romans, so I'm going to give him grace on this. I'm just saying that's a bad place for a break. He might very well agree with me. I don't know. Chapter 3 starts with what advantage then? Then means I'm talking about what finished chapter 2. So 1, 2, and 3 go together. Chapter 4 starts out with what then? So that goes together. Chapter 5 starts out with therefore. Oh, wait, now you got to read all 5 chapters. Wait, chapter 6 starts out with, what shall we say then? Oh my goodness. 6 chapters are all, yes. Chapter 7, no, it doesn't start that way. Chapter 8 does, it starts with therefore. Chapters 9 and 10, they don't start with those pointing backwards. Chapter 11 starts with I ask then, and chapter 12 starts with therefore. So 1 through 6 all belong together. 7 and 8 they go together. 10, 11, and 12 go together. And I'm going to remind you of that all throughout this study. These phrases indicate those chapters refer to the previous chapter. That's why I think it's so important to read the book as a whole, or at least read everything within context of what Paul has to say. Okay, that was a short lesson. I hope it shows you a little bit about how to study a really rather intense book. And I'm going to try and break it down for you in future lessons. May God richly bless you in your life, in your daily life. May He bless you and keep you and make His face to shine upon you and give you peace.